How long can a person live inside a masterpiece of lies before the paint starts to crack? Have you ever looked into the eyes of the person you love and realized you were staring at a total stranger? I have. For 10 years, I was the devoted wife, the silent partner, the woman who built the foundation for Mark's empire while I stayed in the background. That evening, as I sat in our glass-walled living room wearing my favorite emerald silk dress, the air felt thin. I adjusted my red hair, smoothing it behind my ear, my emerald green eyes fixed on the reflection of the man standing behind me. Mark, with his dark brown hair perfectly styled and his expensive designer suit worth more than some people's cars, leaned down to kiss my cheek. He smelled of a perfume that wasn't mine, a floral, aggressive scent. He didn't know that I had already cloned his phone. He didn't know that the woman in the emerald silk dress had stopped being his wife and had become his executioner. The betrayal didn't come as a shout. It arrived as a whisper in a deleted text message. I watched him through the reflection of my wine glass, my red hair cascading over my shoulders. Mark was checking his luxury gold watch, the same one I bought him for our 5th anniversary. "Late meeting, Sarah," he said, his voice smooth, practiced in the art of deception. I looked at his dark brown hair and felt a surge of cold clarity. Behind him, on the monitor of his laptop, I saw a flicker of a notification. Elena, his ambitious assistant with the blonde hair. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply smiled, a sharp, dangerous smile that hid behind my emerald green eyes. I had spent the last decade managing our joint assets, our offshore accounts, and the legal structures of his firm. Mark thought I was just a socialite in a silk dress. He forgot that I was the one who graduated top of my class in forensic accounting. The next morning, the game began. I wore a professional navy blue blazer over my red hair, my emerald green eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses as I met with my lawyer, Marcus. We sat in a dimly lit corner of a high-end cafe. "I want everything, Marcus," I said, my voice as steady as a surgeon's hand. "I don't just want a divorce. I want him to wake up in a world where he doesn't even own the shoes on his feet." Marcus looked at the files I had gathered, records of Mark funneling company funds to buy a penthouse for the blonde-haired Elena. I watched the steam rise from my coffee, thinking about Mark in his expensive designer suit, acting like the king of the world. He had no idea that the foundation was already being liquidated. The woman with the red hair was moving the pieces, and the king was about to be checkmated. Every evening was a performance. I would greet Mark at the door, my emerald silk dress flowing as I offered him a drink. We would sit at our white marble kitchen island, talking about his day. He would brag about his latest deals, his dark brown hair catching the light, his gold watch gleaming. I would listen, nodding, while my mind calculated the transfer of shares from our joint holdings to a trust he couldn't touch. Sometimes, Elena would call, and he would step into the hallway, his expensive designer suit rustling as he whispered lies into the phone. I would catch a glimpse of her on his social media, blonde hair, bright red lipstick, posing in the penthouse I had paid for. I felt a cold satisfaction. Every dollar he spent on her was a nail in his professional coffin. The turning point came when Mark asked me to sign routine merger papers. We were in his home office, the mahogany desk cluttered with documents. He stood there in a gray designer suit, his dark brown hair slightly messy, looking stressed. "It's just a formality, Sarah," he said, sliding the pen toward me. I looked at the papers. He was trying to move the last of our shared stocks into a private shell company controlled by him and Elena. I looked up at him, my emerald green eyes wide and innocent. "Of course, honey," I said, but I didn't sign the papers he gave me. I signed a set of documents I had swapped in a full confession of embezzlement and a voluntary transfer of all his voting rights to me, hidden behind pages of legal jargon. My red hair brushed the paper as I made the most important signature of my life. I spent the next week moving like a ghost. I visited the penthouse while they were at work. I saw the traces of the blonde-haired Elena everywhere: her clothes, her jewelry, the scent of that floral perfume. I didn't feel jealousy. I felt a clinical sense of duty. I took photos of everything. I gathered the bank statements he thought he had hidden in the floorboard. Standing in that living room, my red hair vibrant against the neutral tones of the apartment, I realized that Mark had never really known me. He loved the woman in the silk dress, but he never feared the woman with the mind of a predator. He was so distracted by the blonde hair of his mistress that he never saw the fire in the emerald green eyes of his wife. The day of the great reveal was Mark's 40th birthday. He wanted a grand party at our villa to celebrate his success. The house was filled with the city's elite. I wore a stunning black lace dress that made my red hair look like flames. My emerald green eyes were sharp and bright. Mark was in his element, wearing a midnight blue tuxedo, his dark brown hair slicked back. He was holding a glass of vintage champagne, laughing with board members. Beside him, acting as the perfect assistant, was Elena. She wore a sequin gold dress that clashed with her blonde hair, her eyes constantly darting to Mark with a possessive glint. They thought they were the power couple of the future. They had no idea they were the ghosts of the past. At 9 p.m., I took the microphone. The room went silent. Mark looked at me, a smug smile on his face, his gold watch sparkling under the chandelier. "I want to make a toast," I said, my voice echoing through the glass-walled hall. "To my husband, Mark, a man who taught me the true meaning of investment." I signaled to the large projection screen behind me. Instead of a tribute video, a series of bank transfers appeared. Then, photos of Mark and the blonde-haired Elena at the penthouse. Finally, the document he had signed: the confession of embezzlement. The room gasped. Mark's face went from tan to a ghostly white, his dark brown hair matted with sudden sweat. He dropped his glass, the champagne soaking into his expensive tuxedo. "Sarah, what is this?" he hissed, stepping toward me. But he was stopped by two men in dark suits, my security. I stepped closer to him, my red hair glowing in the spotlight. "It's the dividend of your betrayal, Mark," I whispered loud enough for the front row to hear. Elena, her blonde hair disheveled as she tried to hide her face, backed away, but there was nowhere to go. I looked at her gold dress and then back to Mark's emerald green eyes. "The house, the firm, the cars, even the penthouse you bought for her, they are all mine now. You signed them over to me last Tuesday, remember?" The chaos that followed was beautiful. The board members, realizing their investments were at risk due to Mark's confession, immediately moved to terminate him. The police, whom I had called an hour earlier, arrived to discuss the embezzlement charges. Mark sat on the floor of our luxury villa, his dark brown hair in his face, his expensive designer suit ruined by spilled wine. He looked at me, pleading, but I felt nothing. Elena was already being escorted out, her blonde hair a mess of tears and smudged mascara. She looked at Mark, expecting him to save her, but he couldn't even save himself. The man with the gold watch had finally run out of time. As the guests were cleared out and the sirens faded into the distance, I stood alone in the center of the room. I smoothed my black lace dress and adjusted my red hair. The silence was heavy, but it was a peaceful weight. I walked over to the white marble island and picked up the gold watch Mark had left on the counter in his panic. I looked at it for a moment before dropping it into the trash. My emerald green eyes reflected in the darkened glass walls. I wasn't just a wife anymore. I wasn't a shadow. I was the owner of the empire Mark thought he had built. I walked out onto the balcony, the cool night air hitting my face. The city lights twinkled like diamonds I now owned. I thought about the first question I asked. How long can a person live inside a masterpiece of lies? The answer was 10 years. But the truth? The truth only takes a second to destroy everything. I ran a hand through my red hair, a smile finally touching my lips. Tomorrow, I would start a new life. A life where the only person I invested in was myself. The woman in the emerald silk dress was gone, replaced by a queen who had reclaimed her throne. Mark was a memory, a stain on a designer suit, while I was the future. And the future looked as bright as a flame.
What would you do if you were in this situation? Let's talk in the comments.